Welcome to Network AF. On this episode, I talk with my friend Jezzibell Gilmore about how she got into the industry, starting working as an assistant at AboveNet, a hosting company, moving into operations and deployment at Akamai, going over to the enterprise side, and then coming back actually being an entrepreneur in the service provider world. We talk about how she got into tech, a little bit about the difference between enterprise and service provider, how she's thought about and learned between the business side and the technical side, and as we often do, about growing the community, bringing people in, and teaching and educating. Thanks, and enjoy the episode. Hi, and welcome to Network AF. I'm here with my friend Jezzibell Gilmore. Jezzibell, could you give us a little bit of an intro? Where are you, and what are you up to professionally?
Hello, everybody. I am Jezzibell Gilmore, and I am currently in Milton, Massachusetts. There's an ice storm going on outside, and I am the co-founder and chief commercial officer of PacketFabric. We are a network as a service platform providing data center interconnection and cloud connectivity for anybody and everybody who needs to reach a destination.
Awesome. That sounds like a lot of people. What is a chief commercial officer?
Well, that means I am in charge of the revenue of the business.
Okay. Finding customers and making them happy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we've known each other for over a decade, a few decades. Could you describe how you got into networking?
Well, absolutely. In fact, here's a great story that involves Avi. I got into networking totally by chance. I was working at a law firm in which I found not to be a great fit for me, and I was leaving the firm. One of the clients of the firm, which was the CEO of AboveNet Communications at that point, said, "Hey, I hear you're leaving the firm. Where are you going?" I said, "Oh, I am just looking for something new to do. This is not a great fit for me." He said, "Hey, I have a startup company called AboveNet, and do you want to come and work for us?" And I said, "What do you do?" And he talked about what AboveNet did, which at that point seemed like a total foreign language to me. And he talked about carrier hotels and internet. It sounded really cool, but I didn't understand really any of it. And I said, what am I going to do if I don't really understand what you do? And he said, well, everybody's learning because it's a fast evolving industry. And to me, that sounded very interesting, something that is moving fast and everybody in it is trying to do something new. So I decided to give it a try. And at AboveNet Communications, I met Avi, who was the VP of engineering at that point. And Avi and many others at AboveNet truly helped me learn what the internet is all about, what co-location is all about, how the ecosystem plays into each other. And in addition to learning the technologies, which evolved tremendously since then, Avi, it was in, I think, 1998.
A lot of the stuff is the same, but yes, the applications of it is different. Yes, it has different names.
Absolutely.
The same concepts.
We might have added a few zeros, right, for the capacity. But the business concept didn't change. The ecosystem didn't change. What really drove the business had grown. And I think that my ability to really understand what is driving the business has helped me to get into the position that I'm in today. Not just the technology itself.
Well, it was interesting because as someone that likes to solve problems for people, Dave Rand, who's the co-founder who I worked for, had his own version of focus. I did an interview with Dave Schaefer of Cogent, and they certainly have a lot of focus. And Dave said you're welcome to bring your T3 or OC3 in, but we give you an Ethernet. Everything we do is Ethernet. You can do whatever you want to the other end. And, that brought a certain amount of focus to the organization and what we did and how we thought about it. And then the other principle, which is still debated, was QoS means quantity of service and not like rate shaping people. And, aggressively peering, which again is still debated. More capacity means more revenue if you charge usage based, and happier customers. And again, no one was talking about customer success in 1999, but as a formal thing. But the idea of that was a little bit heretical because, at the time, people were saying, well, my goal is to sell you as much capacity as I can and hope you use none of it, which is a very different philosophy than SaaS or network as a service or even modern networking, the way some people think of it. Was it helpful to be in the Bay Area? Did you get involved? I'm trying to remember back into the late 90s, because, I remember we had networking meetups, and I think you might have went to one of them. We're trying to figure out when you met your now husband, who's also in the networking community.
Well, I actually did meet him back in the Bay Area. And I think that he tells me all the time, he reminds me all the time that I don't remember meeting him in the Bay Area. But we did go to many industry gatherings. And I think that really helped, right? Because everybody were willing to share, exchanging knowledge. And I think for me, I actually exchanged making dinner for the engineering team often for their support in teaching me how the technologies worked and set up labs for me to work on so that I can have somewhere to practice, the information, the knowledge that I've learned. So it's not tit for tat, but to me, it was a great exchange because that's not education you can buy even, right? And I didn't really have any time to go to school to learn that. So it was really useful hands-on information that I was able to acquire that was not taught at school because that was technology that's being put into use right there and then, that's being developed, right? So to me, that really helped shape my career and shape my understanding of pushing the envelope, doing something new on the fly and learning, having the ability to learn while doing, has really helped me grow throughout my career.
Yeah, and I guess also not waiting and not asking for permission, however you formalize that, right? Which is,
cool.
A friend of mine from high school, Hillary, who worked at my ISP, also, she would just go up to people and say, tell me this, tell me this, tell me this. Yeah, I'll answer the customer's question if you tell me this and enable me. And we had no training program, and it was all, just go figure it out, which only works to a certain scale. So you need to have that willingness.
Well, that actually is one of the reasons why that I, as the Chief Commercial Officer today, invest so heavily on sales enablement, which is basically training for the sales team, because the better informed they are, the better that they can support the customer base, right? So having constant interaction with engineers and having the ability for the engineers to explain how something worked or why it works the way that it does, and what are the features, what do they mean, how does it affect the customers' lives, empowers the sales team to work better with the customer base. Because sometimes when a customer asks the question and the sales team only can answer it in a way that is prescribed by the product team, if they don't understand why it is, then they can't answer it intelligently. But when the engineers or even the product team explains it in a way that the customer may not even be aware that it does more than what the customer wants to do, it just does what the customer wants in a different way, it can help the customer change their mind on how they're architecting their solutions by utilizing something that's more innovative. So to me, it's always a different way of wrapping yourself around the knowledge and letting it help not just me, myself, but others. So the learning piece of being in a growing environment is something that's always inspires me and inspires me to push others to learn.
It's a difficult life selling to network people. As a pain in the ass network person, we see this, at Kentic also. If people are happy, then usually they're like, leave me alone, I'm happy. Even if you want to say, like, tell me about your problems and what you're trying to do. And even if it isn't something I can help you with, I'll introduce you, or I'll share with you, from your peers who don't compete with you, and you can all talk to each other. But it's a very multitasked world, in the service provider and web company world, and what we call production networking. It's not as much ticket based as like IT, but it's still there's lots of stuff going on, and it's hard to compete. And so those conversations can be hard. And yes, if you don't add value, then you get put in the category. It can be hard to go from the no value to value. So yeah, you have to select for people that want to do that learning and take that plus their interpersonal skills. And so when I look at things to do, I generally want to make things happen and create things and drive them forward. And you can do that by building things. You can do that by selling things. There's this continuum between business and technology. When you make a company, you have to do both. You talked about labs and trading food for technical knowledge and, well, let's say friendship and engagement for
Yes.
technical knowledge. How did you, think about and decide between, your interests on the understanding the technology and policy and business, continuum,
I actually, at the beginning, I never thought that I was going to get into the business side of things. I was really interested in the operational side of things. I wanted to know how things worked, how to make them better, right? And how to improve the processes and the technologies to just make it work better. I enjoyed, as you say, helping others to achieve their success. But then I think it's part because that I had to learn on my own, and that I didn't quite feel as confident and as technical as probably most others in the industry. When someone's talking about something in a really technical fashion, and I see other people's eyes glaze over, I
apologize.
I want to. Thank you, Avi. But although you can be extremely technical, you are also able to explain in layman's terms how something works. You've done that for me so many times, and I absolutely appreciate that. And so I want to be able to do that for others, which is, I want to help others understand the benefit and of some services or technologies that brings for them, because it could truly change somebody's life and make their lives better. And I recognized at some point in my career that I had the ability to be able to break things down into terms that others can understand and feel comfortable with in asking questions and listening to what I'm trying to explain, because I don't appear to be super technical and I'm not using technical jargons left and right. I'm not trying to prove myself. I'm trying to help others to understand. So I think I've over time gained the luxury of people putting their guards down and having honest and grounded conversations with me. Mm-hmm. And again, that has a lot of influence with me asking really probably pretty dumb questions early on, and having the patience and many others explaining to me.
Please say foundational questions.
Foundational questions.
Yes.
I had to ask very foundational questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the time when you're learning is the best time to teach other people, because you're just remembering what was confusing that shouldn't have been. And so how do we normalize that when I run into people that are, I guess I'm an old person now, but in their graduating college and they're talking about how they get a job and career. I'm saying, start a blog, document the things that you're learning. Julia Evans does this with zines in the observability and sysadmin space, and they're foundational things, but they wind up being very helpful to people because it's at that time when the experts write the books, but they're written for experts, and then so it can be difficult to get into that. So from AboveNet, then you went directly to Akamai, right?
That's right.
Yes, which is not where you met your husband, but you did work together there.
That's where I thought I met my husband, even though I actually met him in the Bay Area multiple times, apparently, as well, because multiple people vouches for him.
That's right. We used to have the sushi meetups in the Bay Area. So
the sushi cabals, that's right.
Yes, the sushi cabal. Yes. So there you were more on the operational side, making the world's largest non-network get bigger, working on the logistics of all that. But then you went into the enterprise side.
I did.
Or was it directly there to State Street, or?
Yes, I went from Akamai to State Street on the technology sourcing side. And so a totally reverse role, right? I was really pushing Akamai's A&P services to the networks. And now I'm turning it around at one of the largest financial institutions in the world at that point, sourcing all the different technologies that they needed from network services, whether it's Wave or ATM service, or IBM mainframe, right? Because that I remember in the at the last day of the year, or the 2 days before the last days of the year, we were running around trying to complete a purchase of, multi-million dollars of mainframe maintenance contract. And it required so many different signatures across the organization. And people had already gone on holiday, and, trying to call people on their really precious mobile phones, because it was still early,
yes.
Not everybody had mobile phones. And while they're on holiday, to obtain a signature, because you have to fax the contract over, and then resort them back into the way the contract needs to be, taught me the process, how enterprise companies worked in their purchasing process, which came in, and I never thought, oh my God, this is the most ridiculous thing at that point. But now it is so useful, because now, as the chief commercial officer, which sells largely to large enterprises, I have a total appreciation for the trouble that, my counterparts have to go through in buying a service, and how challenging it is, even when they want to spend the money.
It's amazing how much longer it can take to buy it than the decision that it makes, that they have to make to buy it. Especially with large, service providers. And then, lots of, I'll say, customs that we build up that get brought from company to company that probably need to be modernized. But on the other hand, there needs to be some way to safeguard that people are spending properly. Have you at PacketFabric considered offsetting your calendar year and fiscal year? We keep talking about it and not doing it. Somehow.
Not quite yet. Not quite yet. Although I am going to say that, PacketFabric is very focused on automation, right? But there's a human element in the enterprise purchasing process today that you cannot automate, because you cannot change the culture of your customers' organization.
Yeah. It's the customs of the customers. It's just the traditions, the way people are raised, Yeah.
And so much of that you have to adjust the way that you're doing business towards. And so sometimes you say you can't lead, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And the two diverse side of the organization, right? The engineering side, yes, I want to consume the automation, I need it. And then you have to have both the patience and appreciation and create a process that can work with the sourcing, the procurement team to make it work on their side so that the engineering side can have the solution that you offer.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's all of these are things to nerd about. You can nerd about the networking, the interconnection, politics, and policies, the business side, and ultimately to make something and bring it to market. You need to there needs to be a team of people to do all these things. So, it's interesting, and we're thinking about for the community that the mix, like if you go to a peering forum, it's a much more diverse crowd than IETF or an area where people are building protocols. Actually, probably IETF is more diverse than Nanog, actually, in some ways, on the core engineering side. But it's just interesting to see what people's passions are and how you pick it up. But it's all things to know about. So you were in enterprise. We talked about understanding how enterprises buy, and the reverse, how you sell to them. But it's interesting because there's smart people doing things that are really critical in both service providers and enterprise, but they are different cultures in some ways. What was your takeaway from that, and did that drive some of your your choice to come back more onto the service provider side, or is that more about stage of company and wanting to be in startups? Like, what did you take away from, I'll just say, the enterprise experience about the deltas and cultures, and how that drives your passions?
Well, so first of all, what drew me back into telecom is the openness, the welcomeness, and the tight-knit community and the interdependency that the community has, right? And I think the word frenemy or co-opetition,
yes,
is common. I think everybody knows that. And we all work together to really, at the end of the day, to create a better internet for everyone to consume. And from the enterprise side, I learned so much, not just the mentality, the practice, but what is the key objective that enterprises had that drove their decision making, right? And it's so very different than what carriers and telcos keep in mind and have as their decision making criteria. So that actually helped shape PacketFabric as a company. And by the way, for all of you who's out there and didn't know, PacketFabric was a company that Avi actually started in 2007, version 1. And so and Avi, as a friend of PacketFabric, gave us the company name and as a gift in support of the company. So Avi, we are eternally grateful for that.
You're welcome.
Still.
That's a future conversation, is when you're right with the idea but wrong with the timing, which I've had happen to me a few times. So
but I was there with Avi in the Rev 1 of PacketFabric, and then Avi had already at that point started the Rev 1 of Cantic in Cloud Helix, and so we he gave us his blessing to move forward with PacketFabric Rev 2 in 2015. So, but coming back, go ahead.
We thought we might want the name because early on we actually were doing sensors and packets and stuff, but Kentic has really stayed, Cloud Helix, now Kentic, has stayed at the high level analytics, telemetry, operations, security, and in the modern ways of orchestration and cloud and as you said, automation, people generally don't want to be watching all the packets. So you are now, so the PacketFabric is moving the packets, not watching them. So I'm glad to see everyone talking about PacketFabric and the name being used well. So.
And again, thank you. But something that you talked about earlier, that's a legacy mentality in at the BuffNet days. People wanted to have customers who bought a lot of capacity and didn't use any of it, right? Mm-hmm. The mentality, at least to me, has really shifted in that your network is really only as good as the people that's consuming it. If nobody's using it, and then what good does it do, right? So interconnection is based on the principle that you are leveraging each other over a platform. And that's what I think made PacketFabric really powerful and will continue to make PacketFabric powerful. And that's what I learned from, the years of us working together and, listening to the conversations. I'm generally not this talkative. And I let other people talk, smart people like Avi, and I like to listen. And I hear everybody talking, the consumption model of services across a broad platform. And it always made me think, why is it so difficult for people to get connected to each other? And that's really, at the end of the day, the driver that we came up with for PacketFabric, for interconnection.
So first of all, don't downgrade your own smarts. But second of all, synthesis can be more valuable than deep technical knowledge. Because as you said, if you can't make people understand it, then, what good is it? But I'll make a note mentally. Definitely we'll do a panel about the evolution of peering, from cost optimization to, you have taught me value increase, right? How do you get, synergistic value by bringing people together? Or is it about control and performance, which it is for a lot of my customers? We sort of always viewed it that way at AboveNet, which was heretical back when people were trying to shape, rate limit the bandwidth down and optimize. And that's still something that's interesting as I think about enterprise versus service provider is, service providers being on this shift away from just like, oh, I must make a maximum amount of return for my CapEx, to just thinking more broadly about services that they can be in to help customers, and that also happen to be higher margin, and where people are on that trend. It was very interesting for me at PTC, where we didn't have quite as many meetings as previous years. So I actually went to the panels, which I didn't usually do. And just, to see that what we're doing, especially with COVID, people really understand, being connected is important. Both the co-opetition and frenemies and just all people on panels that used to work for each other, but they're now, competitors, but also just people are, understanding that core infrastructure can be good business, it's very sticky and it's also necessary, and it's, probably not going away, because the data center space has been hot and not multiple times, let's just say, over the decades. So,
and there's so much building happening, on the data center side. And I think that's something I learned early on in my career for being at AboveNet, right? I was told, what is a data center going to do if there's no network? It's just a concrete box with power, right? So
you grow weed. Crypto mine. There's a few things you could do with power, with cold power, but
Absolutely. I hear cannabis is big business. And
it is. Well, there's a lot of opportunity zones. I know some buildings where opportunity zones are doing both crypto mining and flora
and agriculture.
Forestry, yes, agriculture. Everyone wants to be in opportunity zones, which is another question policy wise what we should do there. So I know I was in Virginia a few times the end of last year, and I just as much as you know how much building there is, I just, to see
There's
a thermal
more.
heat map, there's more. Everywhere I was driving, I was like, oh, let's go to the McDonald's, let's go to the whatever. Everywhere that I was driving, there was like 6 more multi-megawatt data centers, that I had never, gigawatt data centers probably that I had never seen. And well, our stuff, half of our stuff is a DC3, which is one of the, I think it was actually an old Exodus data center that, that then Equinix took over, that's off the campus. So that's like quaint and tiny by moderns. Even AboveNet was quaint and tiny, except for the DC plant that Dave was a big believer in. So you did mention back in the 90s when everything was moving very fast. I think it is that definitely that kind of time nowadays, from what we see with customers, with where's the network? Is it the cloud? Is it the container native interface in the server? Is it my network? Is it their network? Is it the application? People trying to replace network people with APIs, provisioning and automation of everything. What are you excited? What makes you excited to live in these times and be in the network space? What are you watching over the next couple of years and hoping or fearing, around innovation?
Well, I think there's a lot of different things to watch, right? So first of all, I am always looking for the killer application that is going to drive real edge compute. Everybody's been talking about edge, nice. Right? And then lots of people talk about
it's not Tesla.
Self-driving cars, right? Yeah. And then I was like, listen, if the car have to wait for the network to drive, then I'm never getting in the car again. So it's not the self-driving car. The car needs to make the compute on the car, has to be able to make the decision, right? The data connectivity has to come at a later point. But what is the application? Because we know it's coming, right? It's just like everybody talk about compute, cloud computing. Avi, I know that we talked about this in 2004 at Akamai, and it's too bad that we didn't get into the business then.
I sucked at product. I still suck at product marketing, but I really sucked at product marketing at the time. And let me clarify. It might be the metaverse on Tesla, Ready Player 2, which we should only do while parked. But it's not going to be merely, smart city telemetry that requires that to be stored and processed at the edge, today. But yeah, but you're right. I mean, everyone's investing in it. The infrastructure's there. We know CDNs need it. We know performance testing needs it. But how does it evolve from there? I'm fascinated too.
Right. And, is it going to be the killer health app, lifestyle app? Like, what is it that's going to be driving this? We don't know that. Is it going to be that, we can now, in the future, instead of watching Game of Thrones, you can actually now be a part of Game of Thrones? Is future entertainment going to be that you are actually part of the entertainment, you participate in the entertainment yourself, right? And given Twitch, again, it was a total new concept to me back in early 2010s, right?
Yeah.
And wait, somebody's going to want to watch somebody else playing video games online? Why?
Okay, boomer.
Right? But God, there's hundreds of millions of people do that every day, right? So who knows what the future would bring? And I am open-minded. I'm trying to be more open-minded. I'm keeping my eyes out. But knowing that all of that will depend on having infrastructure, and that, yes, software is code, but I also know deep down that there's a physical element to infrastructure that's not going to be able to go away, right? So, and unless you have the ability to put them together, to associate that, the software element to the actual physical infrastructure and tie them together to work for the eventual business objective, you're not going to be able to take advantage of the entire stack.
It's an interesting question that's playing out before us. Where is the line between network and application? Is it, even if you ask someone, what is a service mesh? What is a load balancer? What is a network mesh? Where do you apply policy? Where do you get telemetry? How much do you compute at the edge versus not? Yeah, it's fascinating. And then there's different tribes who have different religious opinions about how far up and down it's going to go. The trend that we're seeing is, and investing in, is that operators is that we really ultimately need to be more like it was in the 90s, when there was just nerd, and it wasn't sysadmin nerd or IT ops nerd or database nerd or storage nerd or telemetry nerd or security nerd, or and it was the entirety of it. Yet at the same time, as things get more complex, automation doesn't mean simplicity, and if you do need to go down what you said, Jezzibell, about there's ultimately infrastructure. That's true across all these dimensions, and which I guess leads to a next topic, which is, let's play on your Game of Thrones. One of the quotes from Game of Thrones is, "It is known," right? You look at someone, it's like, well, how could you not know that? But in many professions, including networking, a lot of what we need to know doesn't come from classes that we learn or study on our own, but is someone says, well, of course you wouldn't use spanning tree that way, or you wouldn't ask network Jill to do this because their policies are this. And if we want to grow the network of networkers and awareness and going between layers, we need to recognize that this tribal knowledge and apprenticeship versus formal knowledge. How do you see that? I mean, how did you talked about sort of being in conversations and trading food and friendship for learning. I mean, do you think that's getting better or more complex when you're hiring people? How do you address it now?
Well, that's actually a very difficult question, because there's a whole new set of platforms, information attainment apparatus, right, methods that you can obtain information. It's much easier to search for information these days. But even then, how do you know what's correct, what's not? One. And even if you learned in school, how do you know it's still relevant? Because things are moving so fast and everybody's making changes all the time. So from the tribal knowledge perspective, Avi, that people say, oh, there's the in group, there's the out group, but it's not even that, right? It's that, how did you get into the in group? And people say, oh, how did you get, in to be accepted? You're not like a normal nerd. Well, we broke things together. We grew up together and we helped each other out. Well, someone broke the internet, help me fix it. And I took part of the internet down. Oh my God.
We had a panel about that. We had a panel about that a couple of nights ago.
And nowadays, nobody has the ability to easily break the internet anymore because, okay, never mind. Well, yes, but most companies put in...
You don't have permission. The consequences are more severe, yes.
Yes, nobody ever had permission to break the internet, but it was easier to make a mistake then because now there are gatekeepers in technology, right, that prevent you from doing something stupid. But back at those times when you broke something, that's when you really learn that you screwed up and you're trying to find ways to fix it, and you're leveraging all of your friends, all the people on helping you. And those people became your trusted resources, and you rely on each other. You still do that today, right? We talk about frenemy and co-opetition. If one part of the internet is down, that means that nobody else can reach it. It's not just that part that is down, that it's down for everyone. So
we used to talk about the hallway track at Nanog, which is getting going again, but with COVID, is not fully enabled.
Right. And, people talk about, and people are also more open in we call it the olden days, people were open to talk about the mistakes that they made. Nowadays, nobody wants to talk about it because the companies that they work for prevent them from talking about it, right? Nobody wants to admit
worth tens of billions, hundreds of billions, and trillions of dollars, which is a little different than the 90s. So.
Absolutely. The little industry that, we worked on that was sort of a science project is now one of the largest industries in the world, right? Mm-hmm. So absolutely. Things have certainly evolved and grown and are very different today than they were back then. But even now, when you're thinking about how to get into that, really you just need to lose your inhibition and, step into a conversation, ask the foundational questions. See, Avi, I can learn too.
Yes.
Ask the foundational questions. Don't let your ego get in front of you being a part and taking part, because just so that for the people who are listening or watching, if you think that, oh, how embarrassing it is for me to ask something that's not smart or not be seen as sophisticated, nobody really go out there and think, oh, I'm going to ask a question that's going to make me look really sophisticated.
There are people that do that. Everyone hates them because they're asking a question just to ask a question. So don't be that person.
No, right. But you ask questions to learn. And when it's authentic, people spot that, people recognize that, and they want to help you. And we live in a community, in an industry that people truly want to help each other. So that's how I got into the industry. And I think Avi would say that's how he's helped many, many others. And that's how I continue. And we all continue to help many others in the industry. Be authentic and just don't be afraid and let yourself ask the questions that you want to know and want to learn about.
It's interesting to hear you talk about the in crowd. And I certainly I'll say middle school and high school was not in the in crowd, but it's interesting because I don't see it. I've heard you and your husband, Patrick, describe it and others, but I don't see it because I started helping people long enough ago that to me, it's just a bunch of people and we all talk. But as I've tried to pay attention, it does seem like it is better than it was. And let's just pick on NANOG, the North American Network Operator Group. I think there's newcomer breakfast, there's women's lunches, there's ways that we try to formalize that. And I definitely also would encourage people. And also, I know it can be hard. I won't say that everyone in these communities is friendly, or that you'll hit them at a time when they're not working on 5 other things, because sometimes network people get, like that. But I definitely would also encourage just trying to make connections and chat. And if you're going to your first conference and want some assistance, feel free to ping Jezzibell or I, and we will try to help as well.
Absolutely. And, Avi, something you just said, the in crowd, people who are in the in crowd don't think that the in crowd is just friends getting together, sometimes having very passionate discussions, and that make it seem very intimidating for others. It's not that we're fighting. We're not fighting with each other. We're just very passionate about what we're talking about. And sometimes our voice get raised and our arms are moving around. But it's not the in crowd people probably consider you and I are in the in crowd, but we're not. We never think it's the in crowd. It's just friends seeing each other, talking about something that that is really important to ourselves, to us, right? And so if you see us talking in the hallway and it seems, really heated and passionate, come in and listen and talk and, gem with us and dive in and to jump in and,
Yeah. And it's all relative. One time I saw Steve Belovan and I forget who he was talking to and someone else. And I was like, oh, I wonder what they're talking about. Those are smart people. And then, Steve turned to me and talked about how his son saw me on TV playing poker. And I didn't even know that he knew who I was, but I have his book because he, and followed the work that he did at Bell Labs and all that. And, when you then meet people, you realize they're just people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And they have, and we definitely do talk about things that are not only networking. I'll say not only networking, and maybe food is the second for this topic. So not only networking and food, but don't tell me about which nanog and which city. Just remind me which restaurant we ate at, and
Absolutely.
Although I definitely have some.
I was going to say so much. Relationships. So many great relationships and conversations were had over meals of people sharing meals together, and what a great way to build friendship.
Definitely. You talked about I'll just keep coming back to it because I don't remember the trading food for networking tidbits and lab assistants and all that, but that certainly wasn't in your job description as executive assistant to the CEO.
No, not at all.
So when you think about people that do want to get into the industry, get into more advanced kinds of networking, whether it's the technical side or the business side, what are you looking for when you are hiring? What are you looking for? What do you encourage people to do when they're new to the industry, in the commercial, in the job sense?
Nowadays, I recognize that something that you cannot teach or build is grit. Because you have to come back. Life is not easy. Building a network is not easy. Working in a fast-paced, fast-moving, ever-changing industry is not easy. And what you really need is someone who is willing to get up again and again every day after, challenges insurmountable. It seems like
you're saying everyone should start as a recruiter or an SDR and spend a few months being told no 50 times a day or 500 times a day.
But it's not just that. It's not the external. Sometimes it's even internal, right? When you're trying to do something and you're not just finding the success. As a parent now, I'm learning how you help your child build confidence. Is to allow them to fail and then help them try again and succeed at that. That's how you build confidence. They need to, if they succeed the first time around, it doesn't help them build confidence, right? And so if you give them an answer and help them succeed the first time, it doesn't really help them. And really what needs to happen is for people to get through, they need to experience the failure and then they need to be able to get back up and do it again. But when that's repeated, as you say, Avi, 50 times a day, it becomes really challenging. And then for someone to come back again and willing to put in the effort and then do it again the next day and the next day, and that's, the kind of perseverance, that kind of character I look for in someone. Obviously you need to have the basic knowledge and the technical knowledge that's needed, but even if nobody's going to know it all, right? And it changes all the time. So you have to have the drive and the curiosity to say that, I'm going to learn what I don't know, and I'm going to do it until I get to success. And that's, I think that you can call it drive, you can call it grit, whatever it is. It's that character that I look for individuals, that helps me and helps my company to be successful.
That's a good way of describing it. I sometimes think about looking for people that enjoy being confused and unconfusing themselves, like the solving the puzzle, but not everybody works that way. Sometimes you still have to get through it, even when it's very frustrating. One of the masters at the Taekwondo school that I went to in Philadelphia, I asked to, I quoted "Keeping the Faith," and is like, well, I just have to embrace my suckiness because I'm never going to be good at this. And he said, but that means you can be the best. Again, very sort of, in Taekwondo, there's a principle, Baekjul Bulgul, which is the indomitable spirit, which is just, keep trying, keep at it. And he said the people that come to Taekwondo that he's, in his experience, who have been cheerleaders and athletes and super flexible, and it's all super intuitive to them, all hit a point where all of a sudden it's hard. And then more often than not, they quit. They're like, okay, this is no fun anymore. But the people for whom it's super hard from the beginning have to sort of self-select that they want to do that. Now, everyone, I think, has to figure out their own way of endorphin mapping. How do they get the reward, right? For me, it's about creating things or, and seeing people use them and talking to customers. But for some people, it's knowledge for knowledge's sake. So, how do we select for that? How do we look for that is an interesting question. And, give people the opportunity and permission to do that. Maybe not the permission to blow up the internet or to blow up production, but that's a challenge too, which I have talked about with other folks. Is there used to be smaller consequences as a company that talks about outages on public media, public and private media, but and in the press and provides data. We try to keep it just to the facts, but these things have bigger impacts. So how do we help people learn? Now we have virtualized labs. You don't need to put routers in on your bookshelf or your basement or whatever, but interesting questions. So, well, I hope to see you soon. Good luck with PacketFabric. If someone wants to contact you or find you, how should they do that, Jezzibell?
Oh, well, you can reach out to me at Jezzibell@jezzibell.com or Jezzibell@PacketFabric.com. And to see me in the hallways, flag me down. I am also on LinkedIn, Facebook, all different types of social media. But again, I think, Avi, you hit on something that you just said, which is that people are normal people. Everybody are just people. So, we are the ones that get in our own way. Our ego is what gets in our own way of becoming the best versions of ourselves, and often preventing us from, reaching out to connect with others to become better versions of ourselves. So don't let that happen. Don't let, your insecurity prevent you from growing. And that's, Avi makes it so easy for me to always reach out anytime to ask any kind of questions. And so whether foundational or not, Avi.
Well, for those that are feeling what you're describing, Jezzibell, I'd encourage them to Google imposter syndrome. And most of the most successful people that I know of that I've talked about with it have imposter syndrome themselves. And I think we haven't talked a lot about it, but through the decades, Jezzibell and I have seen many people that have gotten wealthy. And one of the things that you learn is a lot of it is just about luck, right? A lot of the timing and luck, now you can help your own luck in different ways, but there's some great people that worked really hard with super great, created great things that we all use who didn't get that wealthy. And then there's some people that, it's easy to look at it and say they didn't deserve that. They just got lucky. But, some of the people that, wound up creating the most foundational things and or did the best, still are like saying to themselves, well, why am I in this position? I'm just a person, I'm just a nerd. And so those are the people you want to be friends with. But if you feel like that, it probably means that you're coming from a good place, and that just trust that other people are feeling the same way, including the people that you think are the built all the foundations that you live in and work in. So
that's right. And people I admire, like Avi, just a normal person. So
I may be the third least normal person at my company, but I pretend to be normal and collect friends that are at least I'll say unique. We don't want to say put value judges, to say unique, express their uniqueness comfortably. So,
and thank you for appreciating my uniqueness.
Absolutely, anytime. Well, thanks again, Jezzibell, and this has been Network AF. I'm Avi Freedman. You can reach me on avi@kentech.com. I'm Avi Freedman on Twitter. I'm avi@freedman.net. Avi Freedman on LinkedIn. And we've got cool educational resources at Kentech, and also lots of fun conversations on the blog.